All right, so hi everybody, and welcome to the Bright Founders Talk at Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. I'm very excited today. We have a special guest, Bill Hildebolt. Did I say that right, Bill?
You did say that right. Well done.
Fantastic. He's the co-founder and chairman of Genvideos. Bill is joining us from Boston. Bill, how are you today?
I'm great. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm really excited to see where we go with this.
Fantastic. Well, the main idea here today, Bill, is I'm going to pick your brain. I've got a couple questions for you, and we'd like to learn from your experience. We have a lot of guys out there, a lot of youngsters, a lot of people that are getting into business, looking for ways to improve, looking for some inspiration, some words of wisdom. And hopefully you are the guy to deliver today.
We'll try. I'll do my best.
Thank you. So, Bill, in your own words, can you tell us a little bit about Genvideos? What is the idea of the company? What is your slogan? A little bit of info.
Happy to do it. So Genvideos, it's an influencer marketing company. We have a couple differentiators, which really revolve around e-commerce. And so one of the things that we really focus on is looking at the outcomes of an influencer marketing campaign from a very bottom funnel perspective. So we're trying to either drive actual sales or very clear buying signals in terms of click-through rates, add to carts, or other, again, signals that the influencer has moved their audience toward making a purchase. And so we built a ton of technology around that and done integrations with different technical partners that are affiliated with the different multi-channel retailers that allow us to get those buying signals and incorporate them back down to the post level. So not even just the influencer or the campaign, but literally down post by post. That's one of it, one of the elements that differentiates us. The other is, and sort of similar, is that we really focus on creating content that's repurposable. And in our case, specifically, trying to make that content available to be repurposed onto product detail pages at those retailers. So one, thinking upfront about what is the content that the influencers are going to create, and ensuring that that content not only is going to work on their social channels, because that's obviously still the primary goal, but also will have elements in it that either enable it to be directly or indirectly, and by indirectly, I just mean like through post-production and editing, turned into an asset that can be repurposed on a product detail page and we even assist with the syndication of that content to those product pages, and great influencer content on a PDP can lift conversion rates by 20 to 30%. And so that actually ends up being a massive, massive lever. It's a little bit more indirect, right? Because you're waiting for the shoppers to come by your product page. But once they get there, you're delivering an enhanced content experience, which leads to higher conversions. And we're also expert at looking at those analytics and understanding what that performance looks like. So some of those things, some of those differentiators are now becoming very hot in the market, which is great to see, but we've been doing it for years and very proud of some of the innovations that we brought and thinking around those analytics and that repurposing, which are now, coming to reality, coming to light. So it's an exciting time for us.
Fantastic. Wow, it sounds very technical. I suspect that you have quite a large team working on this, and we'll get into your team in a little bit. I did notice you were talking about innovations and market-leading experience. I noticed that you've won a couple of awards lately. Can you tell us a little bit about those and the story behind those awards?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We'll talk, I think, more about startups and startup culture and, how to succeed. And so one of the things, again, so part of the reason we're so analytical and quantitative is my background is in finance. And before that, I studied economics. And so very much into the quantification of everything. And honestly, building a startup, you're always trying to figure out, where do I place my bets? What resources do I invest in? And one of the trickiest ones is how much do I put into marketing, right? Because sometimes marketing efforts can be ephemeral and it's hard to tie them back to, actual client success in the same way. Like if I pay a developer and they build me this feature, right, I know what I've sort of gotten out of that. So honestly, for a long time, we probably under-invested in marketing. And only in the last couple of years have we felt the freedom and the capability to almost bring ourselves out from below the radar. And we started applying for different awards, the Influencer Marketing Awards. We applied for a Build for TikTok contest. And we're seeing success, almost to our own surprise. And it wasn't that we didn't think we were doing great executions or that we weren't building great technology. We knew we were. We just didn't have that muscle memory or that understanding of how do you play the game on the marketing side. And so I'm really, really proud of the team that we've pushed forward, started making that an everyday discipline to get ourselves out there and put ourselves out front with the technology and then, and taking pride in the executions. And, and what's really interesting is what we found is as excited as we are about winning those awards, our clients are equally excited. And particularly something like the Influencer Marketing Awards, you obviously have to have a client along for the ride when you propose, a campaign to win an award. And, even just being a finalist, right, ends up being something that that client wants to put on their LinkedIn, wants to celebrate internally, wants to go to the award show. And so so it's a lesson I wish I learned earlier. And I think one of the things I wasn't great at, honestly, is in resource distribution and finding that balance. Because that balance, right, to have a successful company, you've got to be doing lots of things right. And everyone talks about focus, and focus is important. But at the same time, there was a reason why there's, a sales department, a dev team, a marketing team, an HR team, right? You've got to have all these disciplines in harmony if you're truly going to succeed.
Fantastic, Bill. What a terrific answer there. You were talking about the beginning, and I'd like to touch on that. It's been 19 years and 3 months for you. I don't know if it's a good thing to remind you or not, but I think it's something important for the viewers to pick up. That sort of longevity is becoming quite rare. It's quite unique, and you must have a terrific team behind you. Walk me through the start, where Genvideo was born, where it was birthed, and maybe a little bit about building a good team around you. You did mention your team. Can you tell us about your thought process behind that? Where did it come from, and how did you acquire the right people in the beginning to turn it into what it is?
Yeah, so again, I don't know that there was any particular brilliance in the, in some of these things, but I'll just tell it to you straight. The original idea that we had was that video was going to transform commerce. And so again, if you think back 19 years, this is like the beginning, like when YouTube was, I don't think we actually founded before YouTube, for example. So there was very little video online. We were still kind of coming into broadband, coming into the fore, and things like that. But we just had this concept. And actually what was hot in e-commerce at the time was text reviews. And most e-commerce sites at the time didn't even have text reviews. And so there were these providers, companies that may be familiar to some of your audience, like Power Reviews and Bazaar Voice, that were running around convincing other retailers, like as big as Walmart.com, right, to think about having text reviews on their site and allowing consumers to contribute in that way. So this is how early we were in kind of that phase of the evolution of e-commerce. And in fact, in 2000, I had been on the board of directors of one of the original user-generated content companies called Planet Feedback. So even the idea of user-generated content versus just publishers moving from sending magazines through the mail to actually, to just thinking, oh, the web's going to be a new way for Time Inc. to push content to us. This idea of a two-way street was just still emerging. And so our idea, though, was that video was going to change e-commerce because video changed every type of medium in the past, right? You just look at TVs like overtaking newspaper and radio.
It killed the radio star.
Exactly. Video killed the radio star. And so the idea was the same thing would happen here. And we pretty quickly tied that idea to not only would video transform commerce, but that it would be user-generated video that would transform commerce. And so we thought that our competitors would bizarre voice and power reviews. And so we were creating these user-generated videos. And the only place you would have to put them, because again, YouTube wasn't really a thing, was to put them on the product pages. And so that's why we built this early partnership, with Amazon. And so a very long way of saying, we had an interesting, good idea, but we were honestly 10 years, literally 10 years, probably too early. And so, part of the story is just being my and my team's stubbornness to stick to the idea until the idea actually made sense, till the pieces fell in place. Was that a smart decision in the grand scheme of, internal rate of return type calculations? I'll let the viewer decide. But again, right idea too early. And so the way, though, that we eventually saw success was, again, working through and hiring great people and then just figuring out if there was a fit, right? And so you do the best you can in recruiting, but it's really, really hard to understand somebody until you're, truly working with them. And so, we've gone through hundreds and hundreds of employees over the years, but we now have a club of folks within the company who have been with us for 10 years or more. And in some cases, it's coming in on 15 years. And in my case, 20 years. And so there are just, if you create that right type environment, there are people who want to commit in that way. It's not for everyone. And so there are certainly tons of amazing people that for 3 or 4 years did an amazing job. And then it wasn't right for them and they moved on. And one of the things that I've had to learn is, because I want us to be a family, so I'm always trying to promote these sort of family attributes. And I had to learn how to be a little bit more balanced and nuanced in that, and not expect that familial level of commitment from everyone, but allow it to emerge where it made sense and allow people to, to move on where it made sense. And so it's made HR a lot easier to have that perspective that you can create a home here for yourself. But if you're also just looking to build your career, this is a two-way street. It has to be mutually beneficial.
So it sounds like you've been on quite an intense personal journey. There's a lot of debate, obviously, between business and personal life, but it looks to me like this is quite personal to you. How do you balance that? How do you balance your work life and your personal life? Do you feel like you have a good balance? Do you have tips for us? How do we do it? How do we keep sane in a crazy world where things are changing? You're taking chances, you're learning, you're growing. You have to adapt to a system, but you also have to keep yourself on a sort of straight and narrow.
Yeah, that has definitely been a huge journey for me. And so, I came out of the finance world. I was, for time being, an investment banker, and that gave me exposure to the concept of, working 80 hours a week, plus what that would do to your body physically, mentally, the toll that it would take. And then, it's very similar in a startup, right? Because you just have to be all in, right? Like, you're betting not just your own family's welfare, you're betting, a ton of investors' money, you're in control of the paycheck for, all of your employees. Those pressures definitely weighed on me for many, many years. And what I realized was, that in order to succeed in that environment, I had to be strong personally, right? Like you have to have incredible stamina. You have to have sort of incredible mental discipline to withstand those pressures. And they will, because they will take a toll on you. And so it's almost like it's very much like being an athlete and thinking about, what do I have to do to build the mental fortitude, even frankly, the physical fortitude to withstand those pressures? And what is it for me, right, that is going to enable me to succeed in that environment? And so for me, it turned into, being very obsessed with running, lifting weights when I could, and then good nutrition. I think for other people, it's probably, taking vacations, right? And really unplugging for a while and getting that reset. I love taking vacations. That's just not as much my part of sort of the reset and that I do. And so I think it's finding your own patterns to succeed, and again, trying to avoid the ones that may be short-term fixes, alcohol, other kinds of, drugs. Not that I have any sort of moral issue with any of those things, and I think they have their place, but, right, are they going to give you the fortitude to be there for the company and for the team, and are they actually reducing stress, or are they creating more stress and pressure? It's figuring that out for yourself, and then, as you get better and better at it, making those stresses at work actually be positive, right? Because, the adage, it's so funny how there are so many adages and maxims in life that turn out to be true. And I think the no pain, no gain is definitely one. So how can you make those stresses at work actually be positive stresses that are making you stronger and that you're enjoying, and you're able to enjoy the successes and move past the failures? Like, all of those are learned skills, and finding, help, resources, mentors, all those things to get through that is just critical. I would have never thought, I would have guessed it would have been a max 3 or 4 years that I did this. So the fact that it's now 19 is just astonishing. And I very much put myself in the accidental entrepreneur category. And we could talk about, things like, are there native entrepreneurial skills or not? But again, I would have never guessed that I'd still be doing this 20 years later. And again, but it's all about adaptation, honestly.
I love that. I think you might have missed your calling as a public speaker, as a motivational speaker. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I'm going to get on Bill's train. This is very cool. You mentioned accidental entrepreneurs, and let's talk about that. Do you think it's something inherent? Is it something that people are born with? Is it a mindset? Do you think we can talk about nature versus nurture? Some people are raised to succeed. Some people are born to succeed. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's it really is an interesting question. I definitely think I think everybody is brilliant in their own way. And I think everyone has superpowers is one thing. I call them in one of the sort of support groups that, that I'm in, or networking groups, whoever one wants to think about those types of things. We have this saying that we use. It's, we talk about people's superpowers, and I think everybody has superpowers. Some people's superpowers are definitely oriented toward business and business success, and so, one of my, favorite stories is there's, my partner in the business now, who wasn't actually at the beginning of the company, but now has the title co-founder. The reason she has that title is she embodied all of those attributes that are just that, failure is not an option, just absolute competitiveness. I mean, one of the things that sort of got her where she is in the company was her willingness to not only disagree with me, but go to the mat in a respectful, but very deliberate, purposeful, I don't care that you're the founder. This is what's best for the company. I'm going to push this agenda until you come around and see it my way, right? And so she has those attributes. And, again, whether or not we want to call her an entrepreneur or not, right? She's actually been at the company 15 years. So you would call her, most people would look at her and call her a lifer. I look at her and call her a founder because she has those attributes of, again, competitive stubbornness. Other people have creative attributes. Other people have, the ability to charm people and, be great salespeople. So everyone's got their superpowers. And so I think there are definitely people out there with tons and tons of vision. But, a lot of vision, you're almost better being a VC, right? To be able to to have a vision, to find a company that fits that vision, invest in it, and move on, right? So tons and tons of vision, which we think of that's going to make a great startup, doesn't necessarily lead to the discipline to execute against a plan, right? So there is definitely something to be said for execution. And again, because I would define a successful entrepreneur is not the guy who can come up with a great idea, create a bunch of gift wrapping around that and sell it to, a big company, Facebook or Salesforce or whoever, and then have that thing completely fall apart internally because there wasn't anything behind it other than the vision. I think of a great entrepreneur as build something that lasts. And, that's a mix of skills that you're probably going to have to put together in a team. So what is an entrepreneur other than somebody who is willing to take a lot of risk, and try to create some of the pieces that are going to be required to build a great company? I don't actually know, because again, I think you have to put me in the entrepreneur category, but I don't think of myself that way. And so again, to me, it comes down to compiling the skills that are needed across all the different functions to make something that lasts. To me, that's an entrepreneur. And those skills don't universally exist in any one person.
Absolutely. So you're managing to exchange energies within your team, which I think is great. It sounds to me like you found a great way to sort of substitute for each other's weaknesses and strengths, and the yin to the yang, as they say, yang, yang.
Yes.
Whichever one of those it is. And let's talk a little bit about the actual market. Now, we know when it comes to video and video products, it's quite difficult. Do you think it's a bit maybe oversaturated? Anybody can produce a video these days, with a mobile phone. You can upload it to YouTube in 30 seconds. There's a lot of content out there. How do you motivate yourselves? How do you stay ahead of that game? What do you do to give yourselves that edge in the market? I mean, if it's a company secret, you don't have to tell me, but I mean, from a sort of determination perspective, how do you keep yourselves ahead of the game?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm happy to share. And I think it's very insightful. I think you have a good grasp of the industry. I mean, so there's tons of enthusiasm about influencer marketing, and rightfully so. It is an industry that has created a sea change in marketing. And so if you look at the job of a brand manager, 10 years ago, again, halfway through the evolution of our company, brand managers, when we came into this business, were spending a ton of time. They would go, making TV commercials was one of the primary jobs of a brand manager. And they would go on 3 or 4 day shoots to create a TV commercial. And you couldn't talk to them during that time where they were out. We're trying to convince them to invest in user generated videos for their e-commerce product pages. They didn't even know how much they were selling on Amazon, back then. And it was a very small percentage, but they were untethered to e-commerce, really untethered to sales, and there was not even a concept of influencer marketing. Now, today, if you look at what a brand manager does, I have these conversations with brand managers, and they can tell you not just how much their sales on Amazon are, but what hours of the week their sales are maxing on Amazon or Walmart.com. And they are spending a ton of time on influencer marketing. So you would think, oh my God, influencer marketing, what a fabulous industry to be in. It's incredible. It's, grown from 0 to whatever the numbers are, 20 billion, 30 billion, pick a number, right? It's massive. And it's absolutely true that it is a huge industry. But the analogy I like to use here, it's also an industry where the reality is, it's sort of like if we woke up tomorrow, and I guess he's retired now, or mostly retired, but you think about Tom Brady, right? He has an agent, influencer marketing, and he's a celebrity, right? And so influencer marketers are kind of the celebrities of brand marketing. But it's as if everybody in America tomorrow could wake up and decide they were Tom Brady's agent. Because when you want to work with a YouTube star, an Instagram star, they're only a DM or an email away. Their emails are on YouTube. So you can email them and say, hey, I represent client A or client B, and I want you to do, I'd love to have you do a sponsorship. So it's like everyone has access to the influencers. That leads to a highly commoditized, highly competitive. And so from a vendor perspective, you're 100% right. It's completely oversaturated. And also, I guess from a creator perspective, it's also hard to make a living as a creator because there's, every day that you take off, not creating new content and not thinking about your strategy, not thinking about your edge as a creator, there's 5 kids, who turned 18 and their parents just bought them a webcam and now they're a creator, right? So it's incredibly competitive for all of us. And so that doesn't necessarily lead, to great margins or the ability to, to invest aggressively. So you're right. You have to differentiate. You really got to focus on what is my special sauce. And so as I mentioned at the top of the show, we focused on this e-commerce, so advanced analytics, focused on bottom funnel metrics, and e-commerce syndication as real differentiators. And what we've left out, by the way, a lot of people invested very aggressively up front in trying to map the entire influencer landscape, all those creators, and scrape all the sites and get all the data on all the quote influencers out there, with the theory that there's millions and millions and millions of influencers that matter. We have a different view. We don't think there are millions and millions of influencers out there that matter. We think there are maybe 20,000 or so. And you don't need to invest a ton in, massive tools to do that. And that was a bet I think we got right, because that, if anything, it's called discovery. That discovery part has been not only incredibly commoditized, there's no money to be made in it, but actually now with all the debates on privacy and first-party data versus third-party data, you've even got platforms like Facebook or Meta trying to have people not use data that has been scraped in that way. So unless you've collected it directly, right, you're now, accused of like not obeying the best privacy practices. So we avoided that. We focused on our own first-party data and our own first-party experience versus trying to index everything and focus in other places. But yeah, you've got to pick your battles. And if you pick your battles well and you build great solutions with that advantage, there are going to be clients out there that are going to be interested in working with you. And so that is definitely one of the secrets to longevity.
Bill, it's fantastic. I want to speak to you a little bit, talking about longevity, talking about where you've been, what you've done. Let's talk a little bit about the future. What is in Genvideos' future? What's your vision for the future?
Yeah, great question. So we actually, one of the mega trends that has come up in the influencer marketing space of recent is this idea of now investing in the creator economy. And so early on, it was all about building tools for brands, very intelligently, right? An enterprise sale, you want to build a SaaS company, which is what a lot of companies in the space wanted to do. You build tools for the enterprise. And as I mentioned, like one of those tools would be discovery. Obviously, there's workflow tools. There's other elements. The analytics obviously would be another huge tool. So building those enterprise tools. And then 2 or 3 years ago, again, very much to your point, the world decided that part of the space had become hyper competitive. And so where are we going to go next? And the idea was maybe we can now build tools for creators, for these billion creators out there, because that's a huge mega market. I'd say we're actually already at the point where the conventional wisdom is turning against that, right? That I think there is a recognition that, that the number of real creators out there is closer to the 20,000 that I suggested versus the billion that, other people, or hundreds of millions that other people have suggested. And so monetizing creators is going to be much more difficult, even though there may be many more of them in brands than perceived. And so there's almost this, that's not the idea either. We actually do think there are some interesting things being done, that can be done for creators on the creator side. By the way, the other thing that happens if you build tools for creators exist primarily right on a platform, a YouTube, a TikTok, an Instagram. And so you're always at risk that your tools are going to be made, irrelevant by innovations on those platforms. So that is one other risk that I think has started to bite some of the creator economy startups. But we think there are things that can be done for creators, again, in understanding their value and providing specific tools that aren't going to be given to them ever by the platforms that are really, really interesting. And that's where we're investing today. And what I love about that is, if we're successful and we can start tying data from the client side to data from the creator/influencer side, Now you've created a network effect. You've created an ecosystem that starts to self-reinforce. And, for my classes at business school, I was, drilled into me that when you've got network effects going, right, you really have something that matters. And so it's a way to break that commoditization logjam that I feel like the industry's kind of stuck in. I don't know if we can get there. Network effect businesses take a lot of resources to build. So, we'll have to be really good. We'll have to be really nimble and agile, but, and we'll have to have a lot of trust, right? Because again, when people, both clients and creators, are sharing data with you, there's an inherent risk of a conflict of interest with you at the center of that. That's one of the nice things about being around for 19 years. People check you out, right? They should have a reason to believe you're kind of solid and credible. So hopefully we can play off that advantage as well. And so, look to that to be the area where we focus moving forward, is trying to kind of, in a very ambitious way, tie the two sides together.
Fantastic. So it sounds like a bright future ahead for a brilliant team. I'm going to leave us there, but I'm going to ask you just for maybe your favorite quote, word of inspiration, something, a motto that people can take home, paint on their walls, no love, peace, happiness, but something they can stick on their wall and say, that's what I'm going to read every day.
Ron is good, actually. So it's funny. I love this question. I run my own podcast, and I've had all these, and we focus on like talking to brand managers, marketers, and what are their experiences. And we've gotten so many great quotes. We're literally thinking about starting a merch line about these quotes from these brand managers. And so I love it. Feel free to steal that idea and go down this path, because I don't think there's any lack of inspiration. The best thing about running a podcast is you realize how much you have to learn from other people too. So, geez, I'm gonna pick two of them.
Okay.
One was, "It's all figure-outable," which is a quote from a woman named Laura Gustafson, who's a senior e-commerce leader at a company called Elanco, and has this great long career of innovation at a bunch of big, CPG-oriented conglomerates. But I loved, "It's all figure-outable" it's a simple quote, but it is it's a very hopeful quote. And it just, it's just keep plugging, never accept that there is not an answer. And so I love that quote. The other one that I'll do was more recent. And it's more of a personal quote. And it is, "No one ever said, 'Gosh, I regret that workout.'" And it was a quote from a woman who, her name's Amber Taylor. She works at a company called Les Mills, and they help gyms around the world like put on workout classes. So they actually train the trainers and then provide curriculums for workout classes. And I love that quote because I'd never heard anything quite like it before, and it turns out to be true, right? Like, so we've all woken up in the morning and we're all like, "I don't feel like working out today. I'm tired. I need to sleep. I didn't have a good night's sleep." But, when you drag yourself out of bed and you go for that run, or you go to the gym, can you ever remember afterwards not feeling great?
Absolutely.
And I was like, it is so true. And so again, it feels very specific to working out, but I actually think it applies to a lot of things in life, right? That when you don't want to do it, you procrastinate. Hopefully you procrastinate productively, but you procrastinate, and then you eventually push through it. It's such a good feeling. And I just was like, yeah, damn straight. And so it's actually made it a little bit easier to get out of bed to do the runs, in the last couple of weeks since she gave me that quote. So there's two for the price of one.
I love that. It reminds me, somebody told me once, it's like borrowing feelings from the future. That, I don't like it right now. I know it's going to be painful. I know I'm going to hate the process, but I know when I'm done, this is how I'm going to feel. So I'm going to take a little bit of that feeling and I'm going to use that now to push myself to that. And like you say, and at the end, you don't look back and go, oh, I regret that I've done that work. You feel good about it. You feel inspired. And I love that. I think a t-shirt is the way to go. Absolutely. So, Bill, I just want to say thank you very much for your time today. It's been incredible. I've loved speaking to you. Thank you so, so much. Is there anything from your side, anything you want to add before we say our goodbyes? Anything you think I may have missed?
No, I think it was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I hope your viewers enjoy it. If anybody is looking for startup advice, in a very general sort of way, I'm happy to provide. I hope, we'll get some questions and comments, and I'll absolutely, engage. I want to pay it forward. I'm at that point. I mean, the one thing that's interesting about being 20 years in is, I've started to turn over the reins to other people at the company. As you can tell by the title, I no longer hold the CEO role. And so this is the point where I want to pay it forward, and I want to help people succeed. And so, again, thank you so much for the time. Thanks for listening, to you and to all your listeners. And if there's anything I can do for folks, I'm happy to do it.
Awesome. Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much.